Welcome, everybody, to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our regular family of seekers. We're reading through the Gita, and we're in chapter 6 today, and we're going to do like 6 verses today. So today is a big day in moving through the Gita, and we read the verses, and I share a little bit, some insights, and then we discuss its relevance to our lives. So that's what we do here every Monday and Thursday, and that's what we're doing today. And we are going to start with text 9 today. So, chapter 6, text 9. I'll share my screen. And Stella, when you're ready, could you read that for us?
Certainly,
Thank you.
a person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind.
Thank you. This is a nice verse to start on because this subject has come up a lot, seeing people with equal minds. And it's just hard. It's just hard, right? It's easy to love people that love you, but to love people that are envious of you, right? Or neutral of you, like not could care less, whether or not you are there or not, without taking offense. That's a pretty tall order. So before we kind of dive into this verse a little bit, I want to kind of zoom out and reorientate us on this Ashtanga yoga process, right? It has 8 limbs. And earlier we talked about the first 4 limbs of yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama. They're all about engaging with the world in a disciplined way, right? So the yamas and the niyamas kind of guide us in the do's and don'ts, so to speak. Asanas, we have a physical practice to move the body, prepare it for meditation, and a pranayama, breath practice, right? So those are the first 4 limbs. So that there's effort, structure, intentional work involved. But as we move into the later limbs, the last 4 limbs, those are like the more advanced stages of yoga. And that's pratyahara, dharana, and dhyana, and samadhi. Okay, so the focus here shifts inwards. So it's less about doing and more about letting go. This is kind of when you go out to the forest to meditate. You're not so active in the world. You're more internally focused. That becomes a priority. Okay, so when we talk about that's kind of the bird's eye view of the Ashtanga yoga practice. So when we talk about this verse, a person who regards everybody equally, this is somebody who's gotten to that more advanced stage. So they're in those last 4 limbs when you can get to that point where you can really see everybody equally. Right? And what really marks this transition between the 2 stages is the control of the mind. Right? The ability to be undisturbed by external fluctuations, right? To stay balanced, whether things are pleasant or unpleasant, whether you're praised or criticized. And we talked about that in the last verse, right? Having that equal vision to everything, to seeing pebbles, stones, gold, all the same, right? We talked about that in the last verse. So now we're talking about seeing people all the same. But the reason being is that you see the spirit soul within the person, right? You don't see a person based off of what they can do for you, right? Or how they feed your ego. And this is a whole different level of spiritual maturity. And it's and we kind of talked about this before in chapter 5 verse 18 when Krishna talked about a yogi who sees everyone with equal vision, from a learned and gentle brahmana to a dog and a dog eater, right? That was like a wide range covering not just human beings but animals too. Like that was a wide range. But in this verse, Krishna's narrowing the focus. He's drawing out the attention to something a little bit more subtle, and in many ways more challenging, right? How we see other people in our day-to-day relationships. So it's like the spectrum of human interaction, right? The subtle ways that we assess people, we categorize people, we react to people, often without even realizing that we're doing it. This is just the mind, the functions of the mind as we move around this world. We're constantly like measuring up people, you know. Right. And again, we if we when we first hear this, we think, oh no, I don't do that. But notice, I mean, like as you go around your day today, notice the mind doing that. You see someone attractive or well-spoken, wealthy, maybe influential. You'll see that you tend to notice them or admire them more, right? Or even try to get close to them, right? And not because of who they are on a soul level, but because in some way they gratify our senses, right? They boost our ego. So that's what this is. It's kind of recalibrating ourselves so that we're not so stuck in that material vision and that we're judging people for what they can do for us. We see everybody as a spirit soul. And again, just like everything that we talk about in here in spiritual life, it's not like black and white. It's not like, okay, today I have material vision, tomorrow I'm going to have spiritual vision. I'm going to see everybody as a spirit soul. No, but you can notice when you start to become less judgmental, right? When you start to become a little bit more accepting, maybe a little bit more open, right? It's like we oftentimes, I know for me, when I think back about before I got into spiritual life, how judgmental I was, right? Like I would see somebody or hear them talk and automatically like put them into a box. Like I knew, and then that would determine like how my interactions with them were, how much attention I gave them or cared, right? And I remember when I met my first spiritual teacher, this was one of the first things I noticed about him is that like he treated everybody equally. And I thought that was really refreshing. It wasn't like somebody who would approach him and didn't seem as smart or have as much money, somebody that like I would be like, yeah, I won't give much attention to. But he was the same with everybody. And I thought that was like something to aspire for. It seemed like freeing at the time, right? Because our material mind is constantly scanning. Like, what can this person give me? How do they make me feel? Do they threaten me or do they benefit me? But if we become a servant of God, and in that, our life goal, our mission is to spread God consciousness, to spread love to other living beings, that kind of conditioning kind of goes away, right? And we'll still see the differences in people, but it doesn't determine how we act towards them, right? We're not ignoring people's external qualities, but we're not letting those qualities define someone's worth. And when we understand that sense gratification doesn't bring real fulfillment, we understand that whatever this person has to offer me, it's not going to make me any more or less happy. This is when we can start relating to people differently because we're not looking at every person as a source of pleasure, a potential source of pleasure, right? Praise or validation. Right? Instead, we begin to see each person as a soul, a spiritual being, right? Equally loved by God and traveling their own unique journey. So as we start to see ourselves more as servants of God, this will happen. And it will happen slowly over time. But as we start to identify more as a servant of God than with our material bodies, our material vehicles. And it's so powerful. It softens judgment. It dissolves envy. It creates that space for real compassion. And that's what Krishna is saying here. Someone who relates to others in this way, not through the filters of desire or aversion, is spiritually mature, right? And this is a person ready for renunciation. And maybe not in the sense of giving up people or responsibilities, but in the sense of giving up that ego-centered way of relating to them. And when we can give this up too, we create space for real connection. Maybe even with that person. Because these labels, these judgments, we're just building walls, right? And those walls inhibit this authentic connection and our ability to spread God consciousness, to spread love. So this is I have some reflection questions here for you guys for this verse. You know, I want to ask you guys if you could think of someone in your life who you find it challenging to view with an equal mind, and think about what feelings or judgments come up with that. And think about what it would be like to create a little space there, right? Between these intense feelings or emotional reactions or judgments, right? And it's not about just like erasing who, like just like ignoring, you know, that person, you know, the bad things about that person. It's not just like just giving everybody a pass. That's not what it's about, because we still have to kind of function in a healthy way. But it's about just kind of getting rid of that emotional clutter that comes as a byproduct of that judgment, of that aversion, right? That kind of trips us up. And that's what we're trying to do. And when we can see ourselves as servants of God and everybody is a part of God, right? That's what we see them. That's what we're kind of basing our assessment off of. It's not on the material bodily platform. But first we ourselves have to get our consciousness to that level, right? And then we can more easily see others from that perspective. The other thing here for us to think about is how we typically respond to people who are neutral or envious towards us. And I can think of people that in my life that I've met that are just like, don't seem super impressed by me. And it like offends me, right? I'm like, do you not know what I'm capable of? Right? It's like my ego just jumps right in and I have to like prove myself to this person. Right? Or somebody who's envious. Like, man, that's been crippling. I know in my life I've like changed myself so that others can feel better. Right? We think about how caught up we get in this kind of framework when we're stuck in it, when we're stuck in this material conditioning, this material vision, and we get caught up in it, and it inhibits us. These kinds of things inhibit us from even like being who we are. Okay? This is how toxic this kind of material conditioning can be. Whereas, you know, if somebody's neutral or envious towards us, as spiritualists, we understand that, you know, that's not even us. That's not even us. And them getting caught up in those things is not even about us, right? It's more about them. And therefore we don't take that on. Right? We do what we can. We do what we can as servants of God and we move on. And we see them even with love and compassion, even people that are envious towards us. And understanding that they are misidentifying with this facade of what will make them happy. Right? Thinking that if they had what we have, they'll be happy. But we know that that's not even true. So we see them with compassion. Because so often somebody's envious of us, we just want to shut down. Right? We want to shut down, we want to run away, we want to defend ourselves. Right? But if we could really adopt this spiritual vision and really imbibe this understanding, it wouldn't even, it would just kind of float off of us. So that's what we're working towards. And that's the foundation for this next stage that Krishna is going to describe, one that builds on this inner renunciation and takes us into deeper spiritual connection. Oh, Stella, I didn't see you had your hand up. Please share with us.
Yeah, I had a, I it this whole conversation reminded me, and it's got to be many years ago now, but I work in a university as a librarian, and a professor came in with some students, and I'm I'm really friendly, of course, being a librarian and everything, and I like walked up to them and I was like, "What can we do for you today? Welcome to the library." I was feeling really happy and like, and this this man, this biology teacher, um, like looked around at his students and said, "Stella, aren't we being obsequious today?" Which was like, obsequious as being like over friendly in a false way, you know? And I was being friendly in a real way, one. But it was like I had this sudden vision that he had to assert his authority, like, and shut me, the woman, down.
Mm.
Like he had to be the main person in the picture, you know? And I I saw like Krishna just granted me this vision, and he just seemed like a child going, "No, me first, me first," like
Mm.
like I'm the big strong person in charge here, even though the library is my place, like it's not
Yeah.
his place. And I just sort of like I just had again Krishna just granted me this thing of like, oh, this soul is just trying to, you know, break me down and puff himself up in front of these students. And I just kind of shook my head and like just smiled at all the students authentically because I was glad they were there. And just was like, dude, you don't understand life. Like you could have made this a really nice encounter, but you just like in your drive for mastery,
Yeah. How did you feel towards him? Did you feel like
like
triggered at all?
yes, yeah, like it was sort of like, you know, oh, like man, patriarchy, you're gonna you're gonna shut the woman down and but I felt like it was my place to do what I did. I did it authentically, so I kind of sat in that. But yeah, it was I definitely felt like I was being a woman, being shut down as a woman.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. Like a woman is supposed to be welcoming, right? But he like twisted it in a way. I thought it was, and then to use this big word that I didn't think half the students even knew what it meant.
I didn't know what it meant when you said it.
Yeah.
I was like, hopefully she tells us what that means. Um, yeah. And this is a good example of as we go through our days, these things happen to us inevitably. And it's like notice when we're triggered and then try to transfer that, like know that compassion is the goal, right? So even if somebody's treating us like that, and it's like obviously offensive,
Yeah.
it's like we don't take offense because we're not identifying on this material level, and we have compassion for them that they are.
Yeah. It's like he's suffering. He needs to feel in control so much. Like, how sad is that? You know?
Right. Yeah, we have compassion in that. Yeah. Because if we take that on, if we get upset or we get offended or then we suffer. And then
Yes.
it just spreads. But
Yes.
if we can stop it there by not taking it on, not being offended, understanding the root cause, which is this over-identification with the body, this illusion that him being higher than you is going to make him
Yeah.
happy, that it's like, okay, you can hold on to that and I'll hold space where there's some compassion that you are so attached to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you,
Somebody else
Stella.
had their hand up?
Anita. Anita doesn't usually share, so this is a
I know,
great.
because most of the time I'm working, so I don't share, but I wanted to more a lot of times, I can relate to whatever it is being said. And this one also is that, I'm part of a mandir, and so we started the mandir, and so I'm kind of there up front. And what happened is that a lot of people, they knew me from the day one, and because of whatever I do in the mandir, I don't know, people takes a liking to me naturally. And so many times, when there is a function, or lots of people come in, they would just come up to me, and they would, they would acknowledge me, and they would want to take a photo with me, or they would want to give me a hug or something like that. And then there would be other women there who who would say, well, what about me? Um, well, what about me? Or did you not see me, or something like that? And then I feel bad. I feel really bad because I I mean, I don't really like to be acknowledged. I don't like, we do a lot of work, and Sandra can relate to this because she knows our Monday, she knows everything. Um, so I always like to be in the background of whatever I do. I'm in the background. I don't like to be acknowledged publicly that I've done this or what or anything like that. And so when this happens, in the beginning, I didn't know how to react, you know? Um, and then later on now, I don't say anything or whatever, but I just wonder from where it's coming from, and it's happened a lot. And so sometimes I was just try to don't make myself being noticed, but I
Mm.
can't help it. So yeah, I can relate to that in that way. And I just let it be. Like you said, we're all being loved by Krishna, and we all have our own paths that we're going. But sometimes for me, I just question it, like, why,
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is that I know so many people who um, you're trying the, to help them to, like, you don't see them on the same level, but you want to help them, but they don't grasp it. Like all this knowledge I'm learning from, even from Veda, when we started with Veda, and then now we continued with you. I'm learning so much from everyone, and I'm sharing it little by little at the Mandir and with families and friends. But I have me and my sister Gola, we both do the same Sukde, and we have a sister or two sisters that are much older. They're retired, and we're trying to tell them to use this time that they have in bhakti, in devotion, in inwardly towards themselves for their betterment. But somehow we can't get through to them. It doesn't matter what we try or what we say or nothing. So we're stuck. But we still keep
Yeah.
trying. And then you have to look at, and then after a point you said, well, everybody have their own lives, they have their own things going on with them. How much can you try, how much can you give? Like sometimes I'm shutting down. Oh, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm not going to try, just going to focus on myself, you know
Yeah. Yeah.
but I have not said this many times, but I'm so thankful to be in this class, with all of you sharing. I'm so thankful, and I'm blessed to be able to be part of this. So thank you all.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing. And I think your experiences are so relatable. Part of this seeing equal vision, seeing everybody with equal vision is not means to not change ourselves to make them happy. Like if you're receiving attention and not because you're trying to or just because it's happening, we can't like minimize ourselves so that others feel better. We could try to be sensitive to other people's feelings for sure. But if we go overboard, which is sometimes, the habit that I get into, we can become like we can become overly dependent. It's like we care too much about and we're trying to get them to approve of us so that we can feel good. And that's the whole point is that we need to rise above that. We do our service, we do it for a higher reason, right? We do it for God,
Yes,
and we're not entangled in all of these kinds of dynamics, and we see them and we have compassion, but we don't get pulled into them because we're anchored to something higher. Yeah, it's hard though. Thank you for
it's
sharing.
hard. Yeah, thank you.
And Mariah.
Yeah, I'm driving right now. I'm at a light, but and I'll be at work shortly. But I just wanted to share when you were sharing this lecture I listened to the other day came into my mind where this they were talking about spreading acknowledgement to all the people within a temple, and it was a whole story of like this person came and gave the doorman a melon, but the doorman was like, I can't accept this melon. I don't do anything. I just hold the door open. So then the doorman was like, I'm going to give this melon to someone else who deserves it better. And and then eventually that person was so humble they couldn't accept it, and they were like, I'm going to give it to someone else. So they all passed the melon on to someone else who they thought deserved the melon more. So I just wanted to give one piece of advice, if that's okay, is maybe when you're feeling bad, like, oh, I'm getting all this acknowledgement, and these other girls are like, well, what about me? What about me? Maybe just share that acknowledgement to them too. Just be like, hey, like, you did do great. You did, like, spread that acknowledgement around, because it is weird to like accept it all. Like, it's like, oh, I didn't do anything. I was just in the background. I just wanted to do these things. And then, they feel like they're not being recognized. And so maybe we can that's another part of compassion and humility is like, okay, I'll accept it, but I also want to share it, right? Like, so maybe just practice sharing. And then the other thing when talking with your sisters, I totally, I totally resonate with like, oh, I just want to help people. I just want to give them knowledge. And it's like, wait a minute, people do have to be receptive. And like, I'm not the knowledge giver, right? Like, I can maybe plant the seeds. I'm not the controller. I'm not the knowledge giver. And I've been practicing that lately too for myself. Is like, man, I want to connect with people on a certain area of my life, like just Krishna consciousness or things, but I have to accept that I'm interacting with people at all different levels every day, and I can still connect with them where they're at, and it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be like, I don't know, but anyway, so basically I've just been practicing like meeting people where they're at, and, if I can get a little something of Krishna consciousness in there, then that's okay. But yeah, just like practicing that detachment, but yet still standing firm and like knowing that I'm practicing bhakti, and like that is something I want to share in whatever capacity. Yeah. So just letting
Wow.
go of like the need to share, and like
Mm.
just letting it happen, like from a place of the heart rather than like a fix or like giving knowledge or whatever. Yeah, if that makes
Wow.
sense.
That
Thank
was
you.
really powerful, Mariah. Both of those things were really powerful. And I feel like that common denominator there was detachment. It's like it's giving love, but with that level of detachment. Even if Anita is to give that give that acknowledgement, pass that on, which is beautiful. Even being able to do that, which is a level of detachment. Just doing it out of just love and and not expecting them to react a certain way or not. You know?
Yeah, and it's a practice, of course. But thank you.
Yeah. So nice. Yeah, and the same thing with trying to help people is because when we're attached, when we feel that, it's because we're making it about ourselves. We're making it mean something about ourselves. And that's like a flashing red light that we're in this ego-centered place. And that's okay because that's natural, but understand that there's more for us than that. And that if we can really get to this place where we're acting with this with just love, with just trying just to be an instrument of God's love, we're not going to feel that tight grip of attachment or like we're sad if these people aren't happy or we're not going to get so caught up in that. We're going to be able to remain a little bit more detached. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, should we move on to the next verse here? Such nice shares this morning. Thank you all for sharing and reflecting. Okay, Stella, when you're ready, can you read 10?
Sure. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness.
Thank you. Okay, so Krishna's now beginning to describe the practice of meditation, right? And it's specifically for this ashtanga-yoga practice, ashtanga-yoga system. So it starts with creating this right environment, right? Externally, this environment that's conducive to meditation. So seeking this seclusion, right? Going to a quiet place, away from crowds, away from distractions, right? And then internally focusing the mind, gradually drawing it inwards. Sitting alone, giving up material possessions, and starting this practice of controlling the mind and the senses. Right? So in this verse, he's outlining the foundational qualities of a sincere yogi. And among them, one thing I thought was really interesting in this verse is this instruction that the yogi should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Okay. So why is this so essential? Right? And it's not like, oh, it's bad if you have desires or because it's gonna happen. It's natural. We don't want to see things like that. But we should understand that when our hearts and our minds are filled with these desires and feelings of possessiveness, we're rooted in material consciousness. And to the degree that we're filled with those things is to the degree that they're going to be distracting to us. Right? They're going to be distracting and we're just endorsing this idea that happiness comes from acquiring, controlling, enjoying external things. Right? So when we think that this is mine or I need this to be happy, the mind becomes restless. And it's like constantly chasing fulfillment in a world that is temporary and full of duality. But the mind gets hooked on it. It's like a drug, and the mind just can't let it go because it's almost like obsessed with this idea that this is the key to happiness. Right? And these disturbances in the mind, they make it impossible to cultivate this inner stillness required for real meditation. And all of us has probably experienced this to some degree. We're sitting in a kirtan or we're trying to meditate, and our mind is just filled of like our to-do list or this or that. It's like it's hard to really be present, if it's just jumping from one external thing to the other. So in the path of yoga, when you get to that place, this real renunciation, you don't have that anymore. These desires aren't pulling you because they just don't exist. And that's where you can go inside really. That's where you can really go inside. And so it's not about like forcing the process. It's about like letting go of the things that inhibit it. So the path of yoga it's meant to awaken our spiritual identity, right? Beyond the body, beyond the mind, and reconnect us with source. But when the heart is cluttered with these selfish desires and attachments, the mind's just going to be distracted. So we have to let go of this to become calm and steady. Right? And then this makes space for deeper clarity and connection. And this doesn't mean, once again, becoming emotionless or indifferent, but it means freeing oneself from the compulsive urge to control or enjoy, right? Enjoy for personal gain. And this freedom, it like opens the door to true peace and ultimately that loving spiritual connection. And I know I used to have a habit of overbooking myself. Like any spare free moment of time I would have would be like completely booked. Like my weekends, I try to like get as much out of them as possible. And I was just like constantly in this not I was never in the present moment. And I was always like stressed about the next moment, like making it happen just perfectly and getting all of these things done that I needed to get done. And it was just like consuming. Right. And I thought that like doing more, having more, filling up my schedule more gave my life more meaning, right? Or made it more valuable. And this is something when I started my spiritual journey, I realized that what I truly valued was the space in my mind, right? Like more than anything else, just having space in my mind. And this space is what was conducive to the most like calm and balanced state and therefore like the breeding ground for real connection. Right? So I shifted how I approach life. Like instead of chasing more, I adopted like a less is more mindset. I became really selective about what I committed to and what I showed up for. Because I saw that the more stuff that I had, the more that I was like, how much did I get done in this weekend? Okay, I got a lot done. That weekend is valuable. The more that I saw things like that, the more that it was just like I had no peace in my mind. It was just emotional clutter, just piling up. Right? So clearing that clutter became my real priority. And it was like it used to almost be like afraid to have nothing planned on the weekend. But then it just was like normal. And 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 I always it always like at the end of the weekend I was never like, oh wow, I wish I had more things planned. It was always like you get that peace in your mind and you just feel happy and content whatever you're doing. So for you guys, I wanted to ask you in what areas of your life do you feel possessive or entangled? Right? And what would letting go look like in that context? And where does it create clutter in your life or your mind that you might be holding on to that prevents this peace and steadiness? Can anybody relate to something like that? Where we're just gripping too tight and it's kind of time to create some space.
What was the question again? The clutter in the mind?
Yeah, an area in your life where you feel possessive or entangled, or maybe even in the past you did, and it just pulled you down.
It happens a lot. But to think about a certain incident, it's a very good question.
Yeah, I know I've had jobs like that too, like jobs that I really liked and I really felt like I was thriving at. But then when I walked away from them, I was so relieved because I realized like how much more stress they were making in my life than was actually, good for me. It's like
Even
just
in the family, with the family, we try to do something, we try to go out of the way, we do something, but then, like you say, overdo it, and still it brings us down because it feels like, I don't know, uh, today's lecture is so intriguing and um, making you, forcing you to think that look um, how we are always judging, how we are always categorizing people, how So this is also one of the interesting questions, that we do something and then we bring ourselves down, and we should have had things. I mean, we should have done like shopping, like you just said, I used to do the same every weekend. Oh, I need this, or I need this for the house, or okay, these guests are coming, and overdoing it, and then feeling like, oh, I shouldn't have done this,
Yeah.
that. And job, of course, what you said, at jobs.
Yeah. That's just like over endeavoring. That's just like epidemic.
Epidemic.
We need to do more. This is mine. I have to have this.
Have this, and
Yeah.
not being in the present, and always thinking, okay, I have to do this, I have to get this done, I have to get that done.
Yes.
So only this spiritual path can calm us down, and to live in the present. And it's not about our happiness, it's about Krishna's happiness, how to connect with that happiness. I mean, priceless.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mariah says I do that around food stuff, like when my daughter eats when she's not with me, and is it healthy or good, and learning to let it be and not try to control how everyone else feeds her. Yeah, that's tricky. That's so hard when it's your kids, and you're trying to care for them and do what's best. And sometimes we just have to let go and acknowledge when things are out of our control. Yeah, because these things that we can't control, they just build up in our mind and become obstacles to us being able to sit in peace and connect with God. So yeah, we have to just give it to God, kind of like what Kay was saying. We do our best, we do it for God. Our kids are entrusted to us. They're not ours. They're entrusted to us. We care for them the best we can, and then sometimes we have to accept. Thank you. Maria.
Yes, thanks. I get kind of possessive of my space and my freedom
Mm.
because I just want to constantly be connecting with Krishna and experiencing all that bliss. But I have a season pass to Sandcastle, and there was a woman who wanted to go to like a pool or sandcastle for the day, and she's been sort of shut in. She has to use a cane. And I invited her, and I was very happy to, and to help her get around and everything. But she was talking a whole lot, and I just wanted to like enjoy the floating space. And sometimes I was getting like, oh, this is really rough on me because I'm so used to having so much space and so much freedom. But I didn't mind taking her, but I get possessive of that space and freedom.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's so relatable. I feel like I struggle with that a lot too. It's like I can't, this hour is not quiet for me to meditate. I'm like automatically angry about it. Yeah. It's funny how we can get possessive over those things. And then it's just like the challenge to find how in that moment we can use that moment to connect with God, even if we can't be doing what it is that we feel like we need to be doing so that we can get different, like how can we accept what's going on around us, the environment going on us around us, and use that to connect with God. It becomes like the real spiritual challenge, right? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else before we move on to the, actually, we still have a little bit here. Okay, so we'll go to the next point in this. As we move forward, I want to keep kind of reiterating this Ashtanga yoga system so that we can kind of see where we are in it, right? So again, the first four limbs, the yama, the niyama, the asana, and the pranayama. This is like the physical or the external aspect. Often when we say, it's often associated with hatha yoga when we hear hatha yoga. And then the last four deal more with the psychological or the meditative side. Right? What's traditionally known as dana yoga. Dana yoga. So these days, we talked about this before, the physical practice of yoga, the asana, those postures, they are super popular because a lot of people turn to them for just like fitness, or to tone their bodies. And so this is really beneficial. This is why people do it. But it's also just a side effect of a much deeper system. And that's what we need to understand here about ashtanga-yoga. When we hear ashtanga-yoga, automatically we're associating it with like a physical postures. And it is there's that in it, in the 8 limbs. That's one of the 8 limbs. But just like that, there's 8 limbs, and that's just one of them. And this bodily improvement isn't the main goal. It's just a byproduct. It's just something that happens because we're practicing this system. So the real purpose of yoga is to help us become free from the miseries of material life, right? And discover a deeper, lasting happiness. And to get there, we have to go beyond the body and address what's going on inside the heart, right? Those selfish desires and impurities. And this is what keeps us disconnected from our spiritual nature. So this is where true yoga begins, right? Yoga means like to connect with source. That's where true yoga begins, right? These inner desires, they pull our consciousness away from who we really are, as spirit souls, and they bind us to the temporary ups and downs of the material world. Right? So this is why even the best bodily postures can only take us so far. So while this asana, it plays a supportive role in the larger journey, because it helps stabilize the body so that we can sit peacefully and concentrate the mind. Because all these things are integrally connected, emotionally, physically. We have to take care of our emotional and physical health so that they don't become something that gets in the way of us sitting peacefully and concentrating the mind. So, this possessive mentality, desires, these are things that pull us away out of the mind, but the body we have to kind of move the body and keep the body healthy so that we're able to sit for long periods of time and concentrate. And a restless body, just like a restless mind, makes meditation difficult. So this is how we address the body, is by this asana practice. And so having this strong, steady, body, it helps us sit strong and steady so that it doesn't become something that inhibits us from connection. But we should also understand that this asana alone can't purify the heart, right? Because it itself doesn't remove that deep-rooted conditioning and attachments that cloud our consciousness. And for that, we need inner purification. And this is a transformation that happens on this subtle level. And so in the 8-limbed process of Ashtanga, asana is just one limb. So it's just one limb. And in the Ashtanga system, the first 2 limbs, they deal with those external disciplines. Or the first limb, it deals with that external, like nonviolence, self-control, truthfulness. These things, they lead towards these deeper internal practices, like meditation and ultimately spiritual absorption. So even with the classical yoga system, what we're talking about is Ashtanga yoga, the regulation of desires comes both before and after asana. And in the Gita, Krishna briefly mentions asana in chapter 6, but he quickly shifts the focus to what really matters, which is fixing the mind on him. And he even ends this chapter by saying that the topmost yogi is the one who lives in devotion, constantly remembering Krishna with love. Right? And this is because when we fix our mind on Krishna, the all attractive, the all loving, we start to experience this higher fulfillment. And this in itself, this connection, this higher fulfillment that we're experiencing, it makes the pull of selfish desires naturally fade. So instead of constantly battling cravings, battling desires, battling this possessive mentality, we begin to outgrow them. And this is the process, right? And then the most direct path to that experience is bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. This bhakti gives us a way to connect to God with both the heart and the mind. So what asana can't give on its own, this freedom from impurities and lasting peace, bhakti offers by linking us with the very goal of yoga, which is this loving union with the divine. Okay, so asana has its place. It can both steady the body and support the mind, but it's only just a small part of the journey. And this real transformation comes when we engage in practices that purify our heart and awaken our love for God. Okay, so again, the point of yoga is not just how flexible or impressive your body is. When it becomes, just a physical accomplishment, or you do it for your ego, you miss the whole purpose. Because real yoga, when you say real yoga, as the Gita presents it, is about transformation, not just of the body, but of the heart. So we have a tendency in the West just to take one limb, and call it yoga, and it's actually not even connected to what the whole actual purpose is for. So just to kind of give some context of what we understand to be yoga here in the West, and what it actually is defined as, by where it came from, and how that fits into the context of what it actually is. Okay, should we do one more verse? Should we do 11 and 12? Or does anybody want to share anything? We have a few minutes left. Stella.
I think we should do the verse because it sort of like looks at that physical.
Okay. Great, let's do it. I'll share when you're ready, Stella.
To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusa grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point.
Thank you. Okay, so here Krishna's giving some very practical instructions on how to set up a meditation space. And some of these details for us might seem a little bit far from our modern context, but these underlining principles are deeply relevant. So we'll try to kind of extract the principles out of what's being said here and then how we can apply it to our lives. Okay, so he says for the seat for meditation, it shouldn't be too high or too low. Right. And the reason being, like, if you're too high, if you're like on the top of a mountain, you might be more interested in the view than in turning inwards. And on the flip side, if you're really low, if you're like in a ditch or something, it could be uncomfortable or like even unsafe. So the point is just to find a steady, neutral space where you won't be distracted. That's the point here. When I read this, I kind of laughed to myself because I so often like to go out and meditate at beautiful sceneries, like by a waterfall or by the ocean, and we should understand, while that might help us kind of turn off the internal clutter of the mind, and that can be good, we should understand that the larger point is actually not even to be distracted by beauty. We're really trying to turn inwards. So that's the first point here. The next, he mentions traditional materials like a tiger skin or a deer skin to sit on, which might sound a little bit strange to us, but in ancient times, these natural materials they had practical benefits, like they kept snakes away. And to clarify here, they did practice this ahimsa, this nonviolence, so they wouldn't kill the animals for that purpose, but they would use the skins only when the animals had died naturally. But again, it was to keep snakes away. It's to kind of keep their environment free from distraction and safe, right? And then once the seat is prepared, the yogi sits down and fixes the mind steadily without distractions. This is the big point. Like maybe instead of a a deerskin rug, we need like our phone in another room, right? Because it'll just creep up and bite us. And right away, we're out of our meditation, right? Where you can no longer go internal. So this is the big point for us, is no distractions. This is where the real practice begins. Because the goal of yoga is to purify the heart. And that happens by learning to control the mind. Right? The mind, the senses, our actions. And then when we can learn to control all those things, we can direct all of that energy towards one point of focus. And that's the process of ashtanga-yoga, right? It has this step-by-step structured process. But these principles, like a steady posture, like concentration, mental discipline, they can be applied in any path of yoga, especially bhakti. Many of us chant. It's like, it's so important for us to kind of imbibe these principles, when we're practicing our meditation. Just like get to a place, sit up tall, sit up straight. He's gonna go over that next, actually. Sit up straight, focus on one point, keep, free of distractions, and turn inwards. Really, really focus. This is so important to get the most out of what we're doing. Or we're just going through the motions, right? It's just mechanical. And in that, we're not really connecting. It's like you try to get your kid to come to the dinner table and they don't want to come. They don't want to come. They don't want to come. They come and they just kind of like sit there and like soap, and they're not really interested in conversation or relationship. It's like they're just kind of going through the motions because they're told to. That's what happens when we show up for meditation and where our heart's not really in it. We're not really putting in the effort to like authentically connect, to rid ourselves of distractions, to be fully present. It's like we're just kind of like slouching around, like it's obvious we're not really there. Our phone's going off every 3 minutes. We're checking our messages, counting down the time. Right? So we be mindful of this time, this space that we carve out in our days and our lives for connection. Because however we show up, that's what we're going to get out of it. And if we show up and we're not really in it, and we're just doing it so we can enjoy the scenery, then that's what we're going to get out of it. Because this real spiritual progress, it doesn't depend on where we are, but on how we're focused, how we're focused, we're steady, and we're sincere in our efforts to connect with God. So that's the principle here in this verse. It's just create this external environment to be free of distractions so that we can really sincerely turn inwards and make that the goal of your meditation. So as we've explored today, we'll kind of wrap it up. The journey of yoga is far deeper than the physical postures or even the external discipline. Those are all just things to aid us in truly and authentically connecting with Source. They're tools along the way, and they can help us greatly. But they shouldn't be independent of what we're actually trying to do. They should just be kind of intertwined, integrated with what we're actually trying to do. And like we talked about in the first verse that we talked about here, 10, or was it? Yeah, it was 10. Was it 9? No, it was 9. True progress means cultivating an equal vision, seeing everyone as a soul beyond their temporary qualities, and freeing ourselves from desires and possessiveness that disturb our minds. Right? So when we can create space inside through this disciplined practice, through this, letting go of desires, possessiveness, trying to cultivate equal vision, right? And then outside through this seclusion, through creating a space free of distractions, when we can create this kind of environment inside and outside, we create an environment conducive for authentic connection and meditation. Right? We prepare our hearts for the ultimate connection with God, with Source. Right? So it's not about perfection or withdrawing from the world, but about transforming how we relate to ourselves, others, and ultimately divinity. Shifting our ego from these ego-driven reactions to this steady, loving engagement with life. And this comes from connection with Source. Okay, so as we move through our weeks, let's just keep this in mind, how we can cultivate greater inner freedom, right? How we can bring this this equal vision and sincere devotion into our daily relationships and practices, right? Because the heart of yoga is connection. So that's what yoga is, connection. Connection is this peaceful, blissful source within us all. And that's where ashtanga-yoga is trying to take us, right? To purifying our heart and opening the door to that loving connection every day that exists right inside of our hearts. Okay, so that is the class for today. Would anybody like to share anything before we end here?
I
Okay.
like what you said about, it's not important where we are for meditation and all. Even I feel like, oh, it would be nice to sit by the ocean and see the beautiful sky and the waves and meditate. See Krishna, of course, in the sky, in the water, in the waves, and then meditate. But uh, it's the inward journey. So doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to wait until you get there. You just have to meditate wherever you are. So
Yes. Thank you.
thank
Anybody
you.
ever put a lot of effort into like getting to the most perfect, beautiful location for meditation? And it's like, it's a pain. It's like you're walking across the street, it's super hot, it's buggy, whatever it is. And it's
Yes.
like you're just trying to go inwards. You could have just sat in your room and in a chair and it would have been more
It's
peaceful.
even like going to Vrindavan, you feel and you plan and you're like, oh, I am going to go to this beautiful religious place. But then the mind is cluttered and it doesn't want to meditate even over there.
Yeah. Yeah. The most work can happen just wherever you are, whatever you're doing. It's just
Right.
work on the mind and the emotional clutter and possessiveness and desires. Yeah. Oh, nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we leave? Okay. Well, thank you all. I will see you on Monday. Already looking forward to it. And thanks for coming and sharing this space and being a part of this community.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for a great class. Thank you.